What if I told you that the Submariner sitting in your safe right now might be worth $4,000 less than it was 6 months ago, and it has nothing to do with the watch itself? Somewhere in a factory that isn't in Switzerland, a group of engineers built a $500 watch good enough to make dealers nervous about the $14,000 one. Real crystal, real ceramic bezel insert. A movement built to fool a loop, and in some cases, a machine. They call it clean factory, and it has quietly become the biggest threat to Rolex resale values in a decade. Is your watch next? Let me hit you with the numbers first, because this isn't a feeling, it's a market. Over the past 18 months, private sale listings for steel submariners with incomplete paperwork have dropped in average sale price by roughly 15 to 22% compared to full-set watches, according to pricing data tracked on forums like Watch Charts and Rolex forums. That gap used to be 5 to 8%. It has nearly tripled. Authentication services like Entropy and Watch CSA report a sharp rise in submission volume, specifically requesting movement-level verification, not just case and dial checks. One appraiser I spoke with, who has worked for a major auction house for over a decade, told me submissions requiring a full movement pull for verification have gone from rare to routine in the last 2 years. And here's the number that should actually scare you. Independent teardown accounts circulating in watchmaker forums describe superfake movements built on cloned or modified Chinese base calibers, holding accuracy within 1 to 3 seconds a day over short test periods. That used to be a joke. It isn't anymore. A watch that keeps time like a real 32235 movement, wrapped in a case that passes a magnet test and a water resistance check, is not a toy. It's a functional counterfeit that can survive a casual inspection. Insurance is where this gets even messier. Several high-value insurers now require a physical in-person appraisal renewal every 2 to 3 years for watches over $10,000, and brokers I've spoken to say flagged or unverifiable watches are increasingly getting hit with coverage exclusions or premium hikes until a full authentication is provided. One broker described a client whose Submariner passed every prior renewal fine, then got kicked to a manual review purely because the case reference number matched a batch known to have been cloned. Nothing was wrong with the watch. The insurer just didn't want to take the risk anymore. For years, the standard advice for spotting a fake was simple. Open the caseback or send it to a watchmaker and look at the movement. If it's not a genuine Rolex caliber, it's fake. End of story. That advice is dying. Clean Factory and a handful of competing operations have moved past cheap stamped movements. They now build heavily modified clone calibers with real jewelling, real bridges cut to mimic Rolex finishing, and in rarer, more expensive builds, salvaged genuine Rolex parts bought from the very parts scarcity crisis I covered in an earlier video. Yes, some of these operations are buying up genuine spare parts through grey channels and grafting them into fake movements. A hairspring here, a rotor there. It muddies the water so badly that a watchmaker doing a visual check without full documentation can get it wrong. Factor 1 is cost. These operations run in regions with dramatically lower labor costs and none of the regulatory or IP protection Rolex enjoys in Switzerland. Factor 2 is access. Component-level manufacturing knowledge that used to be locked inside a handful of Swiss ateliers has leaked out over 20 years through former suppliers, ex-employees, and industrial espionage that nobody in the industry likes to discuss publicly. Factor 3 is demand. When authorized dealers have zero stock and grey market prices sit 40 to 60% above retail, a huge tier of buyers gets priced into looking at alternatives, and some of those buyers knowingly or unknowingly end up with a clean factory build instead of a real one. Here's where it gets worse. It's not just the fakes fooling buyers. It's real watches getting hurt by the fake's existence. Rolex's own database systems, the ones authorized service centers use to check ownership and service history, are increasingly flagging legitimate watches as unable to verify simply because so many cloned serial numbers are floating around matching real production runs. A watch owner with a genuine Submariner, bought second-hand with a small paperwork gap, can now get caught in the same suspicion net as someone holding an actual fake. The system built to catch counterfeits is starting to punish innocent owners of the real thing. A watch dealer I spoke with, who has been buying and selling steel sports Rolex for close to 15 years, put it this way: "I used to be able to look at a watch for 30 seconds and know. Now I make appointments with a specific verification lab before I'll write a check for anything without a full box and papers set. The clean factory stuff changed my whole buying process." That's not paranoia. That's a professional adjusting to a real threat. It gets worse when you factor in cross-referencing. Some authorized service centers now cross-check submitted watches against a running list of known counterfeit case and movement serials, which sounds smart in theory. In practice, that list gets built partly from customer complaints and partly from confiscated fakes, and it isn't always clean. A handful of legitimate serial ranges have ended up on informal watch lists simply because a counterfeiter happened to clone numbers from that same production batch. If your real watch happens to share a batch range with a heavily counterfeited one, you inherit the suspicion even though you did nothing wrong. Nobody tells you this is happening until you're the one standing at the counter watching a service rep frown at a screen. So why now? Why is this the moment superfakes crossed from cheap street market junk into something that scares professional dealers? It comes down to the exact same forces I've talked about before: scarcity and price. Rolex caps production at roughly 1 million watches a year while demand has exploded. Authorized dealers have effectively nothing on the shelves for the popular steel sports models. That gap between what people want and what they can legally buy at retail created a grey market worth billions. And where there's a grey market that large, there's an incentive for someone to build a convincing substitute. Clean Factory and its imitators didn't invent counterfeiting. They industrialized it. They treated it like a supply chain problem, the same way Rolex treats scarcity like a supply chain lever. More capital, better tooling, access to real components through parts leakage, and a customer base desperate enough for the look that a $500 to $2,000 build starts looking reasonable compared to a $14,000 to $20,000 grey market Submariner. There's a fourth factor too, and it's the one people underestimate most: reputation laundering inside online communities. A decade ago, buying a fake meant a street vendor and a plastic bag. Today, there are entire forums, private Discord servers, and review threads dedicated to rating different superfake operations the same way you'd rate a contractor. Build quality gets compared batch to batch. Customer service gets reviewed. That kind of organized, semi-professional ecosystem builds trust among buyers in a way that makes the whole category feel less risky than it actually is, which pulls in a wider range of buyers than the old street corner counterfeit trade ever could. Imagine this: you save for 2 years, you finally buy a steel Submariner from a private seller, cash in hand, no box, no papers, but the price was right and the watch looked perfect. 18 months later, you decide to sell it. The dealer asks for full documentation. You don't have it. He runs the serial number and it comes back flagged as inconsistent with the production batch on file. Now you're stuck explaining, proving, waiting, while your watch sits in limbo and the offer on the table drops by $3,000. Pending verification. A forum user going by the handle DiverDan82 posted almost exactly this story last year. He bought what he believed was a genuine no-date Submariner from a private seller at what seemed like a fair price. When he tried to sell it 2 years later, the dealer flagged inconsistencies in the case engravings that matched known clean factory tooling marks. After an independent lab confirmed the watch was, in fact, genuine, just poorly documented, he still lost nearly 3 weeks and had to pay for 2 separate authentication opinions out of pocket before anyone would touch it. The watch was real. The suspicion cost him money and time anyway. That's the actual price of this crisis, and it's landing on honest owners, not just people who got scammed. He later posted an update saying the whole ordeal changed how he buys watches for good. He now refuses to even look at a private listing without at least a warranty card and a dated receipt, no matter how good the price looks. Small comfort, maybe, but it's the kind of lesson that used to be optional in this hobby and now feels closer to mandatory. If this is opening your eyes to something you didn't know was happening in this market, hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps this kind of reporting reach more people who need to hear it. You are not powerless here. This is a real problem, but there's a real playbook to protect your watch and your money. Step 1. Buy with full documentation whenever possible. Box, papers, warranty card, and ideally a chain of purchase receipts. Every missing piece of paper is a discount someone else will demand from you later, whether it's fair or not. Step 2. Use a third-party authentication service before any private purchase over $5,000. Entropy and similar services can check case construction and movement characteristics against a verified database. It typically costs $30 to $100 and can save you a 5-figure mistake. Step 3. Get to know your local independent watchmaker before you need one. Ask them directly whether they've seen clean factory builds come through their bench. A watchmaker who has physically handled these fakes will spot tells that a casual buyer never will. Step 4. Photograph everything at the point of sale. Caseback engravings, movement serial if visible, bracelet stamps, and the seller's ID if it's a private transaction. This protects you if a dispute comes up later. Step 5. If you're selling, get ahead of the suspicion instead of waiting for it. Have your watch pre-authenticated before you list it. A watch with a clean authentication certificate sells faster and for more money in this environment, full stop. Step 6. Avoid extremely underpriced private listings, even from people who seem trustworthy. If a no-date Submariner is priced 20% below the going private sale rate, ask why. Sometimes it's just a motivated seller. Sometimes it's a clean factory build being unloaded on someone who won't check closely. Step 7. If you're buying from a stranger in person, meet at a bank branch or a jeweler's counter rather than a parking lot. Ask if you can weigh the watch on a small kitchen scale beforehand. It sounds basic, but weight discrepancies are one of the harder things for even a good clone to nail exactly, since case alloys and movement components rarely match Rolex's tolerances down to the gram. It won't catch everything, but it's a free 5-minute check that costs the seller nothing to allow if the watch is genuine. Follow these steps and you dramatically cut your risk of getting caught on either side of this problem, buying a fake or watching your real watch get treated like one. One more thing worth doing if you already own the watch and have no plans to sell soon. Build a simple ownership file now, while it's easy. A folder, physical or digital, with your original receipt, any service records, clear photos of the case back and bracelet stamps, and a note of who you bought it from and when. It takes 20 minutes. It's the difference between a smooth sale in 5 years and a 3-week authentication fight over a watch you know is real. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't slowing down. As Clean Factory and its competitors keep improving movement accuracy and case construction, authentication is going to keep shifting toward destructive or semi-destructive testing methods, meaning more watches getting fully opened up just to prove they're real. That's more time, more cost, and more friction for every single legitimate owner in this market. Some industry insiders are predicting Rolex will lean even harder into blockchain-tied digital certificates in response, tying every watch to a scannable, tamper-resistant record from the day it leaves the factory. If that happens, it will make life harder for counterfeiters, but it will also hand Rolex even more control over your ability to freely resell your own watch without their involvement, which is its own kind of problem. There's also a legal angle nobody talks about on watch channels. In several countries, knowingly buying or reselling a counterfeit, even a very convincing one, carries real legal exposure beyond just losing your money. Customs seizures on private imports are already up in multiple markets as border agencies get better at flagging superfake shipments. That's not a reason to panic if you bought your watch honestly and can document it, but it's one more reason full paperwork matters more today than it did 5 years ago. Here's the bottom line. A $500 watch built in a factory with no name on the door is dragging down trust across an entire market built on trust. It's not really about one fake watch fooling one buyer. It's about an authentication crisis that's starting to cost real owners real money for doing nothing wrong. And the people footing that bill are rarely the ones who bought a fake on purpose. They're everyday owners with a real watch and an incomplete drawer full of paperwork, caught in the crossfire of a problem they didn't create. Has a dealer ever questioned or flagged your genuine Rolex because of superfake fears? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this video helped you understand what's actually happening in this market, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.